Good morning, good afternoon, or good evening, everybody, depending what time you're listening to this. For Sunday, August the 16th, 2015. This is Thoughts, Comments, Opinions. My name is hlohearn. Normally, I record these intros before I do the actual interviews, but I don't know if it was by accident or instinct. I'm recording this one after having talked with Daniel Lipstein about his artwork. You are in for, and I love every guest that I have ever had on the show. You're in for, I think, the best, most intense, most exploratory conversation that we've ever had. Daniel not only talks about his paintings, we talk about the subconscious, the whole creative conversation that happens between an artist in whatever medium they work in, whether it's painting, writing, you name it. That conversation that happens between an artist and their work. You will really enjoy this one. It will make you think. Please feel free to share. But for now, sit back, relax, fire up a pod TV, and listen to the words and look at the paintings as they fly through the air. We'll be right back. And on the line with us from Kildare, we have the artist Daniel Lipstein. Hello, Daniel. How are you?
Hello, Hubert. I'm very well. Thank you.
Glad to hear. Glad to hear. Now, we're going to be talking about your artwork, your paintings and etchings. But first, a bit of your background. You were born in Tel Aviv, and you came to Ireland when?
In 1983.
And that was to study art.
No, I came here. I was adventurous. I was traveling. I did natural medicine. I had a clinic here of natural medicine in Kilkenny for a few years, and then I went to New York in the early 90s. I came back and I did the art full time.
Okay. Why did you come to Ireland originally? Why did you choose here to settle?
I don't really know. I was traveling and I was adventurous, and I was exploring, and I read a lot, and it's one of those things that were meant to be. I met an amazing Irish girl my age then, and I fell in love with her, and I followed her here, and I ended up here.
Okay. Well, our little moss-covered island does have an amazing psychic draw to it, and particularly for anyone in the creative arts. Um, Now, you did go on to study art at the university in Dublin. Had art been something that you'd always worked in from being a child onwards, or was it something you came to later on in life?
Art is something I did since I was very, very young. Since I was five, my grandmother was a painter, and she taught me how to paint when I was five. Um, and I always took painting for granted. I knew how to do it. I was developing. I was doing better and better until I was 10, and and I didn't think much of it. I thought that I know how to do it, so many people must know how to do it. And I wanted to be a scientist. I had the many fields of interest, and I wanted to be a biologist. That was my subject. I studied it very, very seriously when I was growing up. And then I turned to philosophy, and I was writing, but painting and the art, I took it for granted. I thought I know it. It's simple. It's like it's something. But then later on in life, I realized that this is probably what I was put on earth for, to do this. So I did it seriously.
Well, and the interest in biology would tend to explain a lot of the animals, the flora and fauna that appear in your works too. So I don't think that you per se put that away, but you've just adapted your interest in it into art. Am I right on that?
Yeah, completely. This is absolutely true. I am fascinated with animals, and when I draw and paint fish, I study them, their essence of them, and I am observing what really fascinates me. It's I'm in my element when I'm doing it. I'm that biologist that I wanted to be when I was a child.
Yeah. Now, you also paint a lot of water scenes and oceans and so forth. Yet you live in Kildare, and granted, there's nowhere in Ireland all that far from the ocean. But pardon me, how did you come to settle in a landlocked county?
It just happened that Kildare. Well, Kildare is a commuting distance from Dublin, and I have a
Hmm.
lot of galleries in Dublin, and I studied in Dublin. And it's a lot of Ireland is actually Midland where you can live. So now the ocean, I grew beside the sea, the Mediterranean, Tel Aviv,
Yeah.
and it was like a presence, a constant presence. It was my house, my parents' house was a 5 minutes walk from the sea, and it's part of my psyche, the sea.
I see. And now, one other thing before we get into the paintings and so forth, would you care to explain to the listeners who Jonathan was? Because I find Jonathan fascinating.
Oh, Jonathan.
Yeah,
Well, Jonathan is a character I used to write, and Jonathan was a character that somehow represented myself, and I projected into the character a lot of things. So that this is Jonathan. It's also a name that I like that name, and the yeah, it's a long story why the name Jonathan. Names are very important, and there's always a reason why I pick up a name.
oh,
So that was my character. I myself when I used to instead of saying I used to say Jonathan, and Jonathan allowed me to speak in the he, and that opened up something in the mind that allowed me to say things that I couldn't say in the I.
fascinating. Um, it, and I'm a big believer in personas. In writing, we definitely write from a narrative voice, which is our own, yet it's not our day-to-day voice. Um, so nobody thinks that it's two mad schizophrenics talking to one another. I completely understand what you're getting at. So, I is it Jonathan who's the artist?
John is a character. It was a good while ago. I don't have Jonathan anymore. It's not. You see, that, if it's speaking about writers, let's speak about Oscar Wilde, for example, when he
Yeah.
wrote the Le Profundis. If you remember, he had to go to jail actually to write Le Profundis, and there was something that he wrote there that really made me think a lot, that he spiritualizes everything. And now the existence of a character allow, I think, in if I understand correctly, or maybe I don't understand correctly, but this is my understanding of spiritualization of things or matters. If you have, if you the moment you it's like what you said, it's like when you call a character Jonathan, you open up um, something universal that you can speak about concrete things, but those concrete things from your daily life, from actual things you're speaking about, can apply to anyone. and they can apply universally. And this is in the writing process, but it's very similar in the painting process.
And speaking of writing, and we'll start to discuss some of the paintings now that we'll be showing on the screen while we talk. The first one you suggested was fields and mountains. Now, you actually incorporate writing into the paintings. Would you care to elaborate on that process and in particular to that painting?
Yes, definitely. That was an evolution in my creative life. That during the 90s, and the early 2000s, I was writing a lot. See, writing is much less expensive than painting. All you
Yeah.
is is paper and pen. And I used to write with a beautiful fountain pen. And I wrote volumes in handwriting, like but maybe about 15,000 pages that are densely written, and that was during the 90s, and the later on in the 2000s started to write with the computer. So until let's say 2003, I was writing. With a pen. Now I have when you look at those notebooks and without reading their content, it's just the writing is beautiful. When you flicker through the pages, it's like a wave of incredible signs. It's like an ocean with waves, and you see so many and all those signs that stand for something.
So the
Nothing
actual
very real.
the actual visual impact of the
Yeah,
lettering
exactly. Yeah, maybe that's
itself.
what Oscar Wilde meant spiritualization, or like, okay, the writing is very concrete. It's about, if you read it, it's about certain matters. Some are sublime, some are probably stupendous. It's all energy. And it's coming from the soul, from the mind. You don't. I'm not examining the content of it. I'm just looking at the at the first glance appearance of it. Visually, it's striking. It's striking because, let's say, if you spread all those 15,000 sheets of paper on a canvas, on a massive canvas, it's a massive abstract expressionist painting.
Yeah. You know, it brings to mind something that I've been dining out on for over 20 years now. That there's something to be said for physically writing with a pen and a piece of paper as opposed to on our keyboards.
Yeah.
It's a different process. Like you literally are putting more of your body into it. You know.
Yeah, no, completely. And you have the visceral aspect of the texture of the paper, the weight of the book that you're carrying with you, and the over the years I developed a blister on my writing finger that was really huge and noticeable. You know,
Mm-hmm.
it's like and the blister disappeared from when I start to type. You know, now when I type, I need a real keyboard that very strong that can take a punch. See, because my writing was very emotional, and sometimes it got to a point where to a place where I was writing very strongly, and I used to break the pen. Like let's say in the end of a paragraph or in the end of a sentence when I want to deliver some point, and just the energy of writing, it got to the point that it to the place that it was really like a physical exertion of some type of power, emotional power, whatever, you know. And this is the same with the painting process. It's a physical thing that you're standing in front of a canvas, you exert energy, and it's a psychic, spiritual type of soulful energy, and it's there. Whatever you put inside the canvas, in terms of expression, in terms of pigments and marks, it's there. You have to do it in a way that's very clever and harmonious, and in a way that makes sense in painting terms, in terms of aesthetics. See, so well, that's a different. It takes a different mindset to do that, but in fact, it's a very similar mindset.
Yeah, because as I move to the next painting, the road to hereafter, I see that the lot of very fine yet very deep strokes in the etching. So I'm assuming then that's why you went to etching as opposed to, say, watercolors with a very soft and flowy brush technique.
Yeah, you see, the thing is that about the Field and Mountains, it's a large scale painting, and when you examine the forefront of the painting, the grass, it's writing. I was writing there things that were matters in my life. Now, what I'm writing, I write about good things, about basically, it's about love. It's an expression of love. Now, what is love? It's something we don't know much about, but it's there. And probably our art is the recipient of what we call love. That's the way I see it. And now using the concept of spiritualization. Now, I was writing. I did the underpainting in with soft. With the modeling paste and beeswax and then I that was the underpainting. It was full of writing, and I wrote completely and sincerely, complete like as if without no inhibition. Whatever I feel, it's how can I explain it? It's something. Let's say as a writer, when you write a book that's going to be published, you have to make statements that make sense. They make sense verbally. They make sense. They say statements about things, about life. Now, when you paint, you don't make, or maybe when you make music, you don't make statements that are verbal. You make statements with sound, and as a painter, you make statements with pigments and with shades and with marks. Now, in this painting and with many other paintings that I did later and before, when I inserted writing into painting, I used the writing as painting. There are statements that are verbal. Now, if you are some kind of a forensic scientist and you can decipher what I was writing, that would be great, But I don't care what I was writing. I don't even remember. I know that it was about love. It was about something. For example, a lot of it is about my childhood and my parents. Like I love my parents, but I never told them in real life that I loved them. You see, so it's a very kind of remote type of expression. I can tell people that I love them in absentia. You understand what I'm
Yes,
saying?
I do. I do.
Yeah. Okay. So it's completely sincere. Now the viewer of that painting doesn't care, and I also don't care so much about I care about the appearance, the kind of how it flows into the overall of the painting. Now that was the underpainting. The overpainting was when you are finishing the painting and then you take care of all the details without disturbing the initial outburst, like the explosion, the emotional explosion. Now the landscape was taken from Norway. It's a place I visited, but could have been County Kerry, a very young landscape. And so that was this painting. Now the other painting we were talking about is the Road to the Hereafter.
Yeah.
It's if you can notice, is a lot of writing there on the ground, and
Yes, I
it's
do
a
see
theme.
that.
Yeah. See, I don't contrive these things. I don't plan them. They come somehow. Like the process of painting is like a feel-good type of a thing. It's like you do something, you arrange, you organize a composition on a surface, and everything that you do has to have a feel-good factor. Everything has to flow. It has to be correct. Now, you don't understand why this is. Only later on you can compare it to other works of art, either your own or other artists, or you can analyze it. And you can also understand when it comes from a true place, how it is genuinely connected to things, to essential things or substantial things that happened in art history, whatever. And now the Road to the Hereafter, it's about death. It's about going. The things that's very interesting, I was thinking a lot about this particular painting. Again, it's a large-scale painting that is in 2007, and it's about a being, a person who's walking on a road into a place with forest, trees both sides of the road, and he ended up in a place full of light, you know. And in a certain way, I think it kind of comes back to the first painting I ever did with my grandmother when I was 5. We were doing a painting in gouache together of a boy walking in a forest, and it was a very similar composition, and I wasn't conscious of it when I was doing it, because when I was doing it, I knew my mother was actually dying, and I was thinking a lot about the year after, and about what is life and how life begins and everything. So now the road that's full of writing, it's a metaphor for the documentation of a person's life from since he's born and through the whole life. Now, most people do not document their life, but I think the very fact that they lived, every trace, everything that they did, it's already the documentation itself. And so in that particular painting, there are several unconscious elements that came that I didn't know what they were, and only later I began to understand what they meant. And this is a painting that means a lot to me. Now the writing again appears there on the road, and later on it metamorphosed to other works that I did in 2008, Dream Composition 11.
Yes.
In heaven everything is fine. It's just after my mother passed away. Like if you can see the triptych, you can see the table. It's full of intense writing,
Yes.
and it's a development. Yeah, so that's yeah.
For Dream Composition 11 and as well in Dream Composition 8, you work more in a grayscale monochrome. What was the reason behind those choices as opposed to some of the very vibrant, colorful works that you do?
It's a graphic work. It's etching, and the Dream Composition 8 is lithograph. And I just paid attention. I focused on the actual composition and the tonality of it, and the narrative content of it instead of paint. Now to do color in etching, it's a very lengthy process because you need several plates, and it was very important for me just to do that in black and white then. And now the thinking, now it was unconscious thing again, now starting with the Dream Composition 8, the lithograph of a child standing on his head, is I realized basically later on what it means. It's being born.
Yes.
It's like being born, exactly. You see the grass underneath the child is full of writing. You know, the things, the kangaroos, it's an animal with the womb hanging outside like a pocket, you know.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, and it's all about my mother. It's because my mother, I loved her very, very dearly, and I never expressed how much I loved her at all. And I could only express it in the works of art. It's ridiculous, I know. But that's some people are made like that, and probably that's what you know. So now this being born, it's standing upside down. It's like I don't know why is that. It's like you're standing instead of standing with your legs on the earth, you stand with your head on that. I'm sure it makes sense in some.
So hence, like the head first emergence from the birth canal.
Yeah. And now the thing is that later in the year, following year, I did this a painting. It's a painting of paper with full colors and also gold leaf. It's all called in Dream Composition 19, all about my mother. And there you have the ocean, and you have the child is standing on his head again, and you have they're writing in the sky. Now, the year and two after my mother passed away, I could. The very interesting thing about, if you want to focus the conversation about inserting writing into painting, is that I was talking to her in the paintings. So when I was doing the land or I couldn't talk to her so freely. But when I was doing the ocean, and especially the sky, I was completely open and free. and I could say whatever I wanted. So you see, the sky and the ocean are full of writing from that time, you know.
Indeed. Eh, Painting, and I really think that the best of any creative art is very much an ongoing conversation. From the time that you have the concept, well, um, I'll phrase this in terms of a story. The theater scholar Harold Clurman, in talking about directing a play, and I suspect it's the same for creating a painting. Clurman said that if by the end, if you end up with 70% of what you intended to do at the start, you've won. In other words, there's this 30% evolution that goes from your original concept to the finished product that you're then happy with. Is that similar for painting when you sit or stand in front, in your studio in front of the vast sheet of material that you're going to be working on, and you have this first sense of what you're going to create? How much of it changes from that first sense to the final I'm done?
Yes, I can identify completely with that statement, and I would like to focus on also on the word evolution here.
Yeah.
Now, there is evolution in from your first idea to the final appearance of what you do, and it's a journey, it's a learning process, it's a growing process, because the wonderful thing about art and making art is the actual work, the process, and the it's like it's you're dealing with the physical world. Let's say, as a thought, you have an idea which is like a thesis. It's an idea, it's a thesis, and you have to examine if the thesis is true or false. It's very similar process to science. You can refute it or you can assert it by the process. Now, the process is an education, and you become a better person in the end of that process. You go a step forward in a realm that I can't exactly explain it. Many times, in my experience, the outcome is better than what I anticipated in my ideas.
Indeed,
And
yes.
the reason is because if I was living only in the realm of mind, I wouldn't have to have my physical body here on Earth. Like the very fact that you can put pen to paper and write, or you can put a brush to canvas and paint, it's a celebration of the fact that you're alive here on Earth in the physical realm. And now, when you engage in the process of painting, it's you are completely the marriage of mind and matter gets into this kind of term. The existential philosophers used to call it ecstasis. Ecstasis. It's like I love that term. It's usually it's when that meeting point between epistemology and ontology. It's like the mind and the essence of the world. That meeting point when they truly meet. That's an ecstatic point. Now, in art, it happens very often, and the outcome, it's a completely surprising. Now, for example, we were talking about dream composition 11, and everything is fine.
Yeah.
You have there in the central panel, my family. It's the boy, myself, staring, not at the father. Now, my mother is looking at the viewer, and my father is looking at us. And now, there was a certain process that I was experimenting with. Then it's in etching. It's a very fascinating process called sugar lifting aquatent, and it's a chemical process, and it's something they can get quite skilled in. And in that particular etching, there was something happened that made the father appear in a very fascinating way, in a way that only my unconscious could form. Let's say if I was in a deep end of dreaming. And it was true beyond what I was able in my more superficial cerebral mind to contrive. And that happened through the working process, dealing with chemicals, with materials, with the actual strata of etching, and that's incredible. It's very very difficult to convey that to someone who doesn't do it, but the viewer can get the feeling, get the feel of it, the power of it. It's there in the work.
Um, we've referred to dreams a few times, and many you have a whole series of dream compositions. I forget if it's 19 or 21 of them. There are a lot of theories of dreams, and I noted in reading up on you that you've read all the works of Freud and so forth. What is your theory of dreams? What are dreams?
Okay, I can tell you it's very simple, really. Like people may make big deal of it. But the thing is that when you really study Freud, his purpose in dream work and dream analysis was to enable people to become from what he called the psychological person into the philosophical or metaphysical person. So a person will take responsibility for their unconscious or their actions through correct analysis of the dreams, and then become a better person, a higher person. And that was basically the idea behind psychoanalysis. Now, if it is achieved or not achieved, it's a different story. Now, for me, all this dreaming person and all this thing is not that interesting. Like now, the thing is about the name dream compositions. If you take the American poet John Berryman, that he wrote, he called the bulk of his poems a dream song. You see, now the thing is, dream song it's using the word dream. Basically, has a very little thing to do with dreaming at night, or like it basically he wanted to relate to something that is not so tangible. And now in my work, when I had the idea to call them dream compositions, because you see, through I started recording my dream. Since I was 19 or 20, and I discovered through that process that the recording of the dream, the very act of dream recording through writing and analyzing the analysis of dreams, is part of the dreaming. In Freud had this scientific idea that you have to be very precise the way you record your dreams. Now, that precision can have a lot of interpretation. How do you get precise about? Now, the act of recording is part of the dreaming, and it's part of your decision process. So. And as I continued to record my dreams, basically it flowed into recording reality, and the reality became like a dream, and that flowed into the artwork. So now my artwork, the way I use the dream composition, it doesn't have much to do with the dreaming or this unconscious or like this let's say primitive dreaming of what you're afraid of or what you desire. That's not what I'm talking about. I'm talking about a different type of dreaming.
Yes, I do understand, because I do a similar process in plays that I've written, and people say to me, "How do you possibly remember what you dream?" Well, I do, and I quite literally watch them being performed in rehearsal, and then take that away to the writing, and the writing puts this whole other layer on it. And I think what happens is that it's not unconscious, it's not conscious, it's a form of thinking that we all have, but it's almost like a background layer of sound, and somehow that resonates with the eventual audience, that those energies happen to connect, you know?
Absolutely, exactly. You really described it very, very well.
Oh
It's
my
really
God.
like, yeah.
Um, th-
Um,
yeah,
Now, you see, thinking it's I completely identify with what you're saying now, because that dreaming process, educate and recording of it educated me how to create compositions in my my wakeful life that are meaningful on a very deep level, and they are meaningful on the dreaming level and also on the elevated dreaming level. That's metaphysical. That has a very very deep resonance with a lot of issues that are difficult to touch otherwise. For example, there's a work that I did this year for my solo exhibition, the Graphic Studio Gallery. It was a dream. It was an etching exhibition, and this I think this work is very interesting to me. Like that particular work, there are many other works. Each one of them is their own story. Now the work is it's an etching, multiplates etching, aquatint, and it's called The Prospect of Growing Up. It's about growing up. It's a very similar idea to the Road to the Hereafter, like a soul or a spirit goes from very early age towards the light. And now this is a girl at the seashore with the golden, with the balls that describe the essence of the growing up. Now it goes into the horizon, into the ocean, and the balls or those round things that I put gold leaf on, and sometimes I don't put gold leaf on. It's a development in my visual thinking that maybe it started somewhere around during composition 11 from 2008 in Everything is Fine. If you notice the triptych, there's a child sitting on a seashore with a ball under his hand. And then there are two divinity balls on the table, and then there's the last ball is the sun.
Yes.
So the sun is the last ball. Yeah, right. So now the thing is, if you only later I realized the connection to John Berman's poem. Like before he started his dream song, he wrote this amazing poem. It was quite innocent and simple by comparison to his later poems. Like it's a ball poem. If you're familiar with the ball poem, it's about a child who is losing a ball into the deep dark water of a harbor. And it's about a sense of loss that no money will buy the ball again because that particular ball is lost. So another ball can be bought, and he just lost the ball, but the ball is a significance, is a symbol of something much bigger. See, and it's a terribly sad poem. Now the thing is, in this etching, like I love happy endings. I'm a very optimistic person, you know. So if you see the evolution of the ball from under the child's hand, it goes all the way to another ball on the seashore, and then to the divinity balls that are basically stand for the principle of life. That it's a duality of inward and outward, vertical, horizontal, male and female. You can find it in esoteric studies, but it's a ball. Those two divinity balls, and they end up with the ball. The largest ball is the sun. You see. So now in my etching, the ball is not lost. The child never loses the ball. The ball develops to become something amazing.
There is a wonderful line, and I know the author's last name is Kaufman. I'll look it up and I'll put it in the notes with this podcast. But it's a wonderful little novel called The Underwater Bible, and it has a line in it that there are no happy endings or sad endings in life. It just depends where you stop telling the story. Daniel, thank you ever so much. I truly enjoyed, I'm going to phrase it this way, engaging with you. You're fantastic. Where can people see more of your work?
There are 3 printmaking galleries in Dublin that represent me. It's the Printmaze Gallery on Drury Street, and there's the Graphic Studio Gallery and SO Fine Art Prints. Those 3 galleries are in Dublin. And now there's a work of mine in the Royal Ulster Academy in Belfast. And that's an annual show, but those 3 galleries, they are the main galleries. Sometimes I show paintings in all kind of shows, but I don't have an exhibition coming of paintings now. So, and that's it on the internet. You can find it on my website, daniellipstein.org, and also on the website of the galleries that I just mentioned.
Perfect. Daniel, thank you ever so much for doing thoughts with
Thank you,
comments
Hubert. It
every
was a
day.
joy to talk to you. Thank you so much.
Fantastic.
Once again, I'd like to thank our guest, Daniel Lipstein, for that truly absorbing conversation we had here on Thoughts, Comments, Opinions. Speaking of thoughts, speaking of comments, even speaking of opinions, I truly hope that you'll share your thoughts about this interview, and as always, any guests or topics that you'd like to hear us discuss. It's not all arts. I'm perfectly willing to sit down and talk with anyone about anything. So, as the wonderful, talented Kira Donnelly plays us out, as always, from all of us who work the late, late shift here in Ireland, good night, everybody, and be seeing you.